Hey fam! So, accounting. Do I still think it's a good career to get into in 2022 or end of 2021? Let's talk about it. Okay, so let's start by talking about the pros. The first pro that I have for accounting, auditing, any type of accounting work is job security. And per the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the job outlook for 2020 to 2023, the growth rate is 7%, which is about as fast as average. And average in the US is 8%. So the employment change, the number of jobs that are expected to occur or be open between 2020 and 2030 are 96,000. Now, as of 2020, there were about 1.4 million accounting and auditing jobs. I can tell you from personal experience, there has never been a time in my career, in my life since I started interning, that I have not had a recruiter reach out to me. I have not seen any job openings for any level accountant or tax accountant or auditor. It has always been abundantly clear that there will be job opportunities in accounting, especially when it comes to your talent level and your skill level and expertise. I can almost certainly guarantee that you will not be out of a job. Now, I'm not a hiring manager, so don't come for me if you are in a certain area and you don't find the jobs. I am based in the Metro New York area, and there is always room for an accountant. Now, let's talk about job growth. Let me make sure I took a screenshot of that first. Now, according to US News, upward mobility is high, and I can vouch for the fact that you can move up quickly, especially in a field such as public accounting. Now, we'll get into why I don't particularly care for public accounting in the cons, but I will say you can grow so much faster in a public accounting firm or even in an industry. So working at, let's say, a corporation that supports you. It won't happen at every corporation, so outside of public accounting, I can almost guarantee you won't move up nearly as fast. But in public accounting, you can make senior accountant or senior tax accountant or senior advisor in 2 to 3 years. And then you can continue to move up, assuming you have your CPA license, which is your certified public accountant license, to manager in another 3-4 years. In some cases, if you're really good, if you have a great rapport with your clients and with your teammates and everyone in the firm, if it's a smaller firm or a mid-sized firm, you can move up even quicker than that. And then so on and so forth. The years will stretch out a little bit longer the higher up you get between, let's say, manager and senior manager or senior manager and director. But in what job, in what role in any regular old corporation are you realistically moving up every 2, 3, 4 years? You're going to be hard-pressed to find it. So that is a big perk, a big benefit of accounting. Another thing is flexibility, and this really varies depending on the field that you're in within accounting. So for me, in tax, listen, it's not flexible between January and April. And I mean this for personal tax and business tax. So I do a lot of individual tax now, and it is, you know how there's a hell week? There are hell months, and I'm not going away. I'm not having too much fun. I'm not doing a lot of the fun springtime things or late wintertime things that other people might be doing because it's tax time. Everyone needs to get their taxes done. I need to get everyone's taxes done, and it's just not that fun, and I can't really plan vacations in that time. I can, but the way the schedule is set up, the way the workload piles up, it's not completely feasible. Then, if you are an auditor, for example, let's say you have a client with a year end that's at typical calendar year end 12/31, you're probably going to be out of commission for those few months as well, or at least until March. So you can't really plan vacations, you can't do all of the fun things. But the rest of the year, let's say you don't have any other clients that end at that time, or for me, I don't have too many people who have extended their taxes, or, too many year-round bookkeeping clients, or whatever the case may be, I can kind of coast throughout the rest of the year, and I can kind of make my own schedule, or I can take time off as needed. I mean, granted, I can do that right now as my own boss, but even when I was an employee, it was much easier and there was much more flexibility in when I needed to be at work but in seat, and when I could just easily take time off and gallivant wherever it was that I wanted to go, or do whatever it was that I needed to do. And there's also a flexibility in that remote work is very much feasible in this field. You don't always have to be in the field. If you're an auditor, you will more likely than not need to be present at a client from time to time, but for the most part, it's pretty flexible, especially in tax, or maybe even sometimes in advisory. I know in advisory you do need to go out to the clients fairly often, but with everything going on in the world, working habits have changed. So flexibility is a great thing within accounting, as long as we're out of those dead periods, or those blackout periods, those blocked times. And am I on my third? Third? Whatever pro this is, it's that if you start pretty young and graduate on the typical timeline of going to school and graduating from college, you'll be around 22, maybe 23. You will more likely than not be starting with a starting class of people around your age. So you will have tons of other young 20-something-year-olds, and it will make for a good group for camaraderie and getting to know people and doing all of the fun, stereotypical early 20s things that you can expect or would expect to do based on what the media pushes out to you, how 20-year-olds should be living. So those were some of the pros, and if I had to rank them, I would definitely say that job security and flexibility would come at the top of those pros. And another thing that I do appreciate about accounting is in the beginning, it's kind of how much money you make compared to how much work you feel like you're doing. But as you move up, you can command a higher rate, a higher price for your work, especially if you do kind of narrow your expertise level and your skill level down and kind of get into a good niche. You can start getting top dollar for just consulting work, and you can do that on your own in some cases and be your own boss too. I mean, you can really make the field what you want it to be, which leads me into the cons. So the first con is you have some type of dues to pay. Now this could be in any field. I can only speak to accounting. You will be the grunt. You will do the grunt work for at least the first 1 or 2, possibly more depending on how many years you're in that entry-level position. And it does suck. It sucks going through busy seasons, and it sucks especially when you have a team you're not really too fond of, or you just can't even talk to them because y'all don't agree on anything, you don't like each other, y'all know you don't like each other. It can be a pain in the neck, and you can feel isolated. You might feel a little bit bitter that you're dealing with all this crap, especially when there are other people who you may have gone to school with, some finance majors who might go into investment banking, making oogob amounts of money compared to what you're making. So once you play the comparison game and once you kind of get stuck in the rut, it can kind of get you down. And it does suck to just kind of be stuck, feeling like you have no control over your schedule or what you do because everything is dictated by your manager or your senior or whoever is running the engagement in the case of an audit or a tax audit. So that's rough, and that's somewhat more specific to public accounting. It's gonna suck for a little bit, but I do kind of think that that's every career in the entry levels. I just feel personally like it hits home a little bit more for accounting because busy seasons. I miss them sometimes for the camaraderie and the commiserating because everyone's kind of in the same boat during busy season. But I don't miss them because I was away from home a lot, I was working crazy hours, and it wasn't the life I wanted to see myself in 10, 15 years down the road once I got into it. Another con is, I'm on the fence about whether or not I feel good about this or not. I'm on the fence about whether or not I feel good about this. You more than likely will have to do a year in public accounting. And this is not for everyone. Not everyone wants to go into public accounting. You can jump right into what is called industry or just working in corporate America, not in a public accounting firm as an accountant, as an entry level. But it is a little bit harder to get those roles. It's not impossible. You don't have to work in public accounting. If the thought of public accounting is dreadful to you, work your butt off and find a great company that you can go into as an entry level and move up that way. But if you want experience in a lot of different areas, or if you want to have that upward mobility quickly and kind of don't mind the grunt work or the grind or just kind of going balls to the wall and dedicating yourself to your career for a couple of years, I think public accounting is the way to go. And I consider that a con because it kind of sucks that you can't just jump right into industry and do that. And also, public accounting just sucks. I'm sorry. Maybe one day I may go back to public accounting. I don't really know. It just kind of really sucks. Maybe I'll do a whole video on the pros and cons of public accounting. Maybe if there are enough likes or enough comments or whatever the case may be on this video. But it just sucks. It sucks, and I don't like to shit on anybody in public accounting. There are many pros to it, but for me personally and my personality and what I wanted to do in the future, it just was not for me. So then, another con to accounting is once you do find a niche, or even if you don't find a niche, for example, with tax, once you start in tax, it's very hard to break out of tax. So you tend to get pigeonholed in certain areas within accounting. I think there's a lot more flexibility in auditing because you touch so many different things within the accounting field that you can branch out and do other things. Or even within auditing and tax, actually, there are further specializations that you can get and niche markets that you can move into. But it's a little bit easier as an auditor to move around than as a tax accountant to move around. I hope that makes sense. You're kind of always seen as whatever that accountant is, a tax accountant. You kind of get to be so specialized in tax that it's hard for you to branch out and move into, I don't know, let's say something ridiculous like lease accounting, which is specialized in its own right. And that can suck if you are somebody who just wants to experience the world of accounting and get to know many different facets of accounting. Is that a con if you know from the jump where you want to go? No, not at all. I kind of figured that I would stay in tax once at the very beginning when I started, there were many times in between that I faltered and wavered and wanted to do other things. But I think having the experience I have now, I can be pretty self-affirmed in knowing that that's what I wanted to do and that is what I want to continue doing. But you will have days where you think, I don't know if this is a career for me. The next con is going to be, and this is really dependent on where you go, and this can be said of any job, but there are a lot of politics involved and hierarchies involved in accounting. I realized that I forgot to mention within this con in particular that there is a lack of diversity, particularly among Black CPAs, and that can be quite interesting as you rise the ranks and even as you deal with higher ranking individuals, so executives and partners if you're in public accounting, and directors who still have that old white male accounting mindset. And I understand it's hard to break out of certain ideals and certain philosophies, but it does definitely feel like you are disadvantaged, especially as a Black woman. I can't speak to the Black male perspective, but as a Black woman, there is sometimes a weird, I don't want to say tension, but just a weird vibe that you get in being in the accounting space, especially if you start going to conferences. Granted, you will see a few Black people, but it's a handful compared to how many non-Black people, mainly white people, are in the profession and who show up to these events, especially AICPA events. And it makes it a little bit more difficult if you are one of those people that likes to see representation in the roles that you're looking for or that somewhere you would like to aspire to be. And this definitely doesn't go for everybody, but it can be a con, and at some points in my career, it definitely did feel a little bit like a con. And it never stunted my growth, but I could see some people feeling slighted or like that would stunt their growth. So I would be remiss as the young Black professional to not talk about Black professionals in the accounting field and this particular con. So please excuse me for not mentioning this before. Again, I'm editing. I look like just a hot mess right now, so hopefully you can just accept this voiceover and this image of me in a freeze frame. Thanks. Now back to the video. Especially in public accounting, I mean, if your manager doesn't like you, if a partner doesn't like you, you can just forget about it. F your life for a little bit. This is something I didn't really like about the corporate world overall, is playing the game. Can I play the game? Yes. Do I want to play the game? No. And it's something you're just gonna have to learn and take cues, verbal and nonverbal, from people around you and people above you on what is expected of you, your role, how you interact with clients, how you interact with other teammates, team members. And there's just a lot. I'm not a brown noser. I don't particularly like to kiss ass or kiss up to people. There are some folks in, whether it be exec level, middle management, upper management, that will feel like you will need to suck up to them. If it's something you really want, if there's a position, a role, whatever it is that you really want, and you don't mind sucking up to people, good for you. But there is quite a bit of that in certain firms, in certain markets, and depending on what field you go into. Because again, accounting is a big umbrella term for many different fields. And the last bit is the dreaded CPA exam, or just licensing exams and continuing education overall. So most professional fields, I should say, so I'm pretty sure doctors have to do this. I know lawyers have to do it. Accountants, tax professionals, so not necessarily tax accountants, but let's say IRS enrolled agents. We can get into a whole video on them and how that works. But there are these things called continuing education credit. And in order to maintain your licensure, or just staying abreast of what's going on in your field, in your industry, you will have to complete a minimum amount of continuing education credit. If you're not adhering to maintaining a license or anything like that, you can kind of do them as you see fit. But it is best to stay on top of what's going on in the field, because with law and tax and medicine, things are changing all of the time due to legislation, due to breakthroughs in medical research, just everything. And you kind of need to know what's going on. You're not really a good professional if you're still stuck 10 years in the past of accounting regulations and how things are done. So that can kind of be a con for some people, especially if you're already a busy professional. Then tacking on, it's not even a lot, let's say 20 hours of continuing education credits on top of that, and usually they're boring. If you pick good ones, they're great, but let's say you pick a 2-hour one and it is just boring. It puts you to sleep sometimes, but you got to get through it because you got to do it for your license or whatever it is that you're trying to maintain, or your knowledge base. Those kind of suck sometimes, but when you get a really good instructor, you cherish that. You cherish that person because they just make it more fun and they make it more exciting, and you actually want to learn. So yeah, I'm not sure how many pros and how many cons that was. Please don't let there be a bias toward the field if I listed many more cons than pros, because I do think the pros that I listed are strong pros on their own. If you are interested in the accounting field, I encourage you to take a couple of classes, see if it's really for you. If you can, do an internship. A lot of accounting internships are paid, so you're not getting taken advantage of like some of these other internships where you're unpaid. Just putting that out there, and they tend to pay very well. I think you should just go for it. Give it a shot. See if you like it. You don't have to commit. You don't have to be bound to it. In 2022, do I still think it's a good career? Do I still think it's a good field? Yeah. Yeah, I do. And I hope to see many of you in the field, and I hope to see you around the next video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this pros and cons of accounting. Till the next time, peace. And if you're interested, check out this video here, or this video here, if you'd like to see some more content from me.